Now I'm excited to introduce Leah Schust, who's the founder and executive director of the Family's SCN2A Foundation. SCN2A is another ion channel, but it's a sodium channel. And our patients often present with similar phenotypes, so there's a lot of crossover. Leah's my go-to. She's a wealth of information, always ready with advice or a hug. She loves sharing a good tequila and has become a dear friend. At the American Epilepsy Society's annual meeting this year, Leah was asked to speak. I don't even see Leah.
I'm over here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I knew you were sitting back there. Leah was asked to speak to clinicians, neurologists, and epileptologists about what it's like to be the mom of a child with a rare genetic epilepsy. She gave the most moving and powerful talk, and I'm pretty sure every doctor in that auditorium, well, they were changed forever. Immediately, Sunitha was there with me, and we looked at each other and we both said the same thing. We need Leah to tell her story to our community. So we asked her to be our keynote. She's probably regretting that she said yes, because her family conference is next week. So in the craziest and busiest of times, she's traveled to Texas from Pennsylvania to share her story. So please welcome Leah. We love you. Thank you. Oh. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for that incredibly embarrassing introduction. And thank you to the board for inviting me. This is such a huge honor. I can't tell you how grateful I am for this opportunity. So does the sound okay? Okay. So as Lisa said, I'm the founder and executive director for the Family's SCN2A Foundation. It's a totally different gene than CACNA1A, but it has a lot of overlap in symptoms, and a lot of the work that we're doing is very similar to the work that you guys are doing. Oops, I think, there we go. All right, so I have a little boy named Ben, and he was diagnosed with an SCN2A related disorder in 2013. He's 11 years old now. Before I begin, I want to just fully disclose that I'm not a doctor or a nurse or a clinician or a researcher, or I'm not even a professional speaker, so I'm not even sure why they asked me to be here, to be honest. Like, you know, I've never had a seizure, and I don't suffer from a catastrophic disease like SCN2A or CACNA1A. I'm just a mom to a very special little boy who does, and when I was faced with a challenge, I chose to fight. And my goal in sharing our story is that maybe it'll hit home for some of you here today or listening in virtually and inspire you to stand up and fight back too. So again, thank you for the opportunity to spread awareness and grow our community by all of you, which I'm going to refer to as the many. And you'll figure that out here in a minute. So as I share my family's journey through the diagnosis of a rare genetic disease, I'm going to show you how we went from being the only ones to a part of a much, much larger movement. So meet Ben, serial hugger, AKA the one. Ben loves ceiling fans, his pacifier, cheese puffs, jacuzzi baths, and of course his mom and dad. Ben has the amazing ability to win over people's hearts without saying a word or even making eye contact. He's the definition of love and truth, which I'm sure most of you can relate to in this room. But because he's nonverbal and he intellectually functions on a much younger level than his chronological age, he's unable to do many things that typical kids can do. Some of my favorite things are his inability to lie, cheat, steal, be sneaky, be mean, or hurt anybody else. Ben's able to do many things too. And some of my favorites are his ability to hug, love unconditionally, snuggle, and he makes others so very happy. Ben turned 11 this year, and that in itself is a huge accomplishment, given how sick he was as a baby and the chances that the doctors gave us that he would even make it to his second birthday. So Ben was born on a Friday, weighing in at 8 pounds, 9 ounces. He was gorgeous and perfect in every way, and that is fact, not bias, my mom told me. It wasn't too long into his second month that we just felt something was off, and we brought up our concerns so many times to the pediatrician. He wasn't making eye contact. He was actually avoiding eye contact. He wasn't bearing weight on his legs when you held him up like typical babies do. And he had this weird shaking in one of his legs, which I now know is clonus, but then I did not know that. He had excessive lower jaw quivering that kind of came in this like cycle. But because he never fell off the chart for development, all of those concerns were dismissed as an immature nervous system or a paranoid first-time mom, or my favorite, he's a boy and boys are lazy, which is true, by the way. Just kidding. We tried to push out the thoughts that something was wrong, and we cheered Ben on as he learned how to crawl, he pulled to a stand, and even he took a few steps on his first birthday. And although he continued to make strides with his physical development, right around 11 months, we noticed a regression in his social and emotional stuff. He lost his smile, and he lost the few sounds that he was making, which were mama and dada, which were, I'm really glad that he did it. It's in my memory forever, but I miss it. We just knew something was wrong, and we just assumed it was autism, which was devastating to think about, but we knew something was wrong. A month later, at his one-year checkup, we stood firm and we demanded to be heard. And we finally got the referral to get his developmental testing, but we never made it to that appointment. Ben started having seizures 6 days later, and he was diagnosed with infantile spasms. It's a catastrophic form of epilepsy. Does anyone in this room know have you ever heard of infantile spasms? Okay, so you know. This type of epilepsy is considered a neurological emergency. If not treated immediately and aggressively, it's likely to cause devastating and irreversible damage. So our autism concern fell to the curb because we were now in a race to stop the seizures and save his life. Ben was having hundreds to thousands of seizures every day. Many days all he did was seize and sleep. My husband and I would take turns holding him and a pillow because every 6 seconds, his head would violently drop, and if you held him against you, he would hit your shoulder or your collarbone and hurt. So we held him with a pillow so he would go down into the pillow. It was terrible. And we actually had to take turns doing that because it was such an emotional toll to hold a baby for an hour while they seized. That might put off some red flags to some of you because nowadays we would have been told to break that up with emergency rescue meds, but at the time, they told us not to. Ben's health declined before our eyes. It was hard to tell what was worse, the seizures, the medical problems that came from the seizures, or the side effects of the strong anti-epileptic drugs that we were pumping into his little body. He lost everything, every single milestone that he had gained in his first year, and he reverted back to a newborn. And the doctors told us this is how he was going to be from now on, if he survives. I remember one night sitting in the nursery and holding him, just a limp 20-pound newborn, and rocking him and just thinking, why didn't I videotape every single thing he did that first year? Because I'm never going to see it again. So, as you all know very well, probably too well, there are really few words that exist to describe how it feels to receive a life-altering diagnosis like this for your baby, who seemed healthy the day before. Our lives were flipped upside down, and we seemed stuck in time, frantically hoping that the doctors were wrong. And from the minute we learned at our 20-week sono that we were having a boy, I had this vision of him in his Little League uniform. And as we listened to the doctors that day describe what happens to these kids, that dream just disappeared. And honestly, I've never been able to conjure it up again. I just kept asking, why? Why him? Why us? Why is this happening? And the doctors were not as concerned with the why as they were with stopping the seizures. So I started searching online for anything that could help me understand this. And that's when I found the Infantile Spasms support group. And within minutes of posting a question in that group, I had 18 answers. And I know you all have a group also, so you totally get what I'm talking about. You get more information so quickly from there than trying to call your neuro. Most of these moms who I'm still friends with today were a wealth of knowledge, and they taught me everything I needed to know on getting Ben the right care. The earliest and most important lesson was that doctors can be wrong. That's pretty scary. Like, once you realize that, you're like, I've been trusting them this whole time, and they can be wrong. That's a huge weight now on your shoulders, because you're now responsible for every decision for your kid. You start to second guess what you're being told. And that's when Brant, my husband, and I decided not to accept that Ben was never going to get better. And we sought a second, a third, and even a fourth opinion until we found a team who was willing to fight as hard as we were. The next thing that these moms in the support group told me was that there was always a cause, and that may alter the course of treatment and ultimately his future. So our road to finding a cause wasn't really smooth. Our first two neurologists never even suggested genetic testing. Luckily, our third neurologist agreed and set us up immediately with a geneticist. They ran 3 single gene tests. He didn't have Angelman. 6 months later, he didn't have Angelman because they did a second one just in case. 6 months later, they ran another one. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's when I turned to my support group again, and I learned about GeneDx. And it's a leading genetic testing company who they're here today, and you all know very well. They were running a special on their brand new early infantile comprehensive epilepsy panel. 53 genes. I don't know how many are on there now. Do you guys? Over 100. So, I mean, that was huge back then. And the biggest thing was, no matter what our insurance covered, the maximum out-of-pocket that GeneDx would charge us was $100. So I demanded that be drawn, and our geneticist agreed and did it. So the panel got sent in. 6 months later, we got the call that shed the light on why our baby was so sick. The panel showed a change in his SCN2A gene. SCN, what? Can you say it slower so I can write it down, because that made no sense, just a whole bunch of letters and numbers. We've learned a lot since D-Day, which I fondly call the day that he was diagnosed. We were told a lot of things then, none of which hold true today, like we were the only case of SCN2A, and because it is so rare, there is no research, and without research, there is and never will be a cure. We were told that this was a tough break and to prepare for the worst. Ben will never talk, he'll never walk, he'll never learn, and he'll always have seizures. And he's likely not going to make it through childhood. The truth is, they had no idea what a diagnosis of SCN2A meant, and I kind of wish they had just told me that rather than trying to prepare us for the worst. So fast forward to today. Look at him now. He looks great, right? Happy, healthy, like a typical kid. Well, Ben is not well. He suffers from an array of medical and developmental diagnoses because of the SCN2A-related disorder. He continues to have seizures, although they're much more controlled. He's in diapers. He's fed through a tube. He's legally blind. His development is that around maybe a 12-month-old baby. He's completely nonverbal, unable to communicate any of his wants and needs. He's oblivious to danger, and he needs 24/7 supervision. He has scoliosis so bad that already by age 11, we're facing surgery soon. And just recently, like in the last month, he's been diagnosed with osteoporosis and is going to be having infusions. So our life now revolves around a disease. And when we were faced with the choice of acceptance or action, we chose action and we chose to fight it. It goes without saying that we accept Ben for who he is and what he is today, and we love him just the way he is, but we're fighting for a better future for him every single day. After all, he went from a walking, babbling 1-year-old to a 20-pound newborn, and has since relearned how to hold up his head for a second time, how to crawl, how to walk. He endures 8 hours a day of therapies and instruction. He's resilient and stronger than me in every single way, and the least I can do is fight for him. I realized all that fighting that I had to do just to get him the diagnosis and the right treatment, that set me up for the next battle, finding a cure for his disease. So once again, I found myself turning to social media because it had been a lifeline before, and I was going to harness that power again. I started a Facebook group called SCN2A Epilepsy. To be quite honest, back then I thought SCN2A meant infantile spasms. I didn't know anything about the spectrum. I didn't know that you could have a whole bunch of different symptoms and still have SCN2A. And I'll never forget when that mom, the first mom that joined the group, we stayed up all night just messaging each other, comparing every little thing. Does your kid have freckles? Like, do they stay up all night? They must be twins, you know? And we're still friends today. When you're thrust into the world of rare disease, babies having seizures and lost futures, you cling on to what you can to keep afloat. And for me, that's been the amazing mothers that I've met along the way. These people, many of whom I've never even met in real life, these people, they've become my family. And I see it happening here today. So within 6 months, our group went from right to about 20 families. And then a year later, 50. Our neurologist was shocked by how many patients existed. And suddenly the tables turned. And now I was educating her about SCN2A. A year later, along with 2 other parents, we started the work to take the Facebook group to the next level, and we started a 501c3. We began fundraising. So as you can see, Ben is not the only one with SCN2A. And I'm not the only parent that chose action. We had become the sum. And let me tell you, there's power in numbers. Our team consists of the most brave parents and incredibly generous professionals that I've ever known. These individuals stood up when their lives were shattered by a diagnosis, and they chose to fight back. I added this slide not only to recognize our staff and board of directors, but also to make the point that this battle takes a strong and diverse team who could show up every single day and speak in one united voice to advocate for those we serve. It's not something that can be done alone or with just 2 people. If you're here today or listening in virtually, no matter where you are in your personal journey, the most important thing you can do is get involved. It doesn't matter how big or small, whether it's monetary donations or volunteering your time. It could be as simple as sharing one of the foundation posts just to spread awareness. I wear 2 bracelets all the time. I don't know if anyone noticed that. I hope by the end of the day I don't have 2 bracelets on because I want to be able to spread awareness everywhere I go. I give it to waitresses at the restaurant, and anyone who asks about Ben, or maybe they don't even ask and I just give them one. So you need an army, and you, my new friends, you guys are the warriors. So by teaming up with our community, we grew, and now families are being referred to us at diagnosis by their geneticists and neurologists. This is a big deal because nobody has to spend a day alone being the only ones anymore. The word families is part of our name for a reason. We didn't mess up. Like that's a big part of who we are. It's rare and devastating. SCN2A related disorders affect the entire family, same as CACNA1A. Our team of leaders strive every day and in every way to improve the lives of not only the patients, but the entire family. Our vision is really clear. It's a world with effective treatments and cures for all SCN2A related disorders. The foundation funds critical research. I don't need to go on and on about my foundation. You guys have accomplished more in 2 years than we did in 7, but I'll just touch over some of the stuff. I was so impressed, Lisa, with your talk. You guys have done so much. So we fund critical research to find new treatments for our kids, and that sounds super important, right? Well, it is. Without basic research, we would not have hope for our children's future. However, it's not the most important thing that we do. We pride ourselves on being stewards to our community. The families with children suffering from these disorders are barely keeping their heads above water. I'm sure most of you can relate, and I speak from experience. The foundation has programs to support our families on an everyday basis, such as the birthday club, the crisis and grief program. The crisis is when you're in the hospital. We give you a certificate to get a real coffee, and if you've been in the hospital, you know what that means. Real coffee matters. We have a family meetup grant. In addition to the financial and emotional support, we empower families and professionals with education, just like this. Mine's next week. My conference is next week. So I'm hoping it's half as successful as this one has been so far. Oftentimes, we, the patients, have to be the experts. as our children's doctors have never even heard of SCN2A or CACNA1A. So education's super important. We've accomplished a lot over the last 7 years, and we believe that what has been most transformational for the field and our specific disease group is the basic research that we funded. To date, we've awarded over $1 million in research grants. Through our investigator-initiated grant program, the Families SCN2A Foundation hopes to accelerate the development of therapeutic treatments and disease-modifying advancements for those living with changes in the SCN2A gene. This grant program is designed to facilitate preliminary investigations that will potentially lay the groundwork for subsequent grants from the NIH and other government sources. Our philosophy has been to spread seed funding in the labs that are most likely to use it to advance their work and then secure bigger funding elsewhere. And this has really paid off for us. Multiple transformational discoveries have come from basic research that we've supported, including SCN2A we realized that SCN2A plays an important role throughout the lifespan, which dispelled the theory that there was a short therapeutic window, and that delivered a lot of hope to families with older kids or adults. We have a very clear phenotype-genotype, meaning if you know the variant, you can predict what the clinical symptoms are going to be, and that can help you stay ahead of comorbidities and complications by getting set up with the right specialists earlier. And like Lisa was talking about, you guys are well on your way with your natural history study. With more patients comes more data, and so an international database of SCN2A patients that we set up several years ago has made us an attractive target for research and for drug discovery. Industry groups that are looking to find a new gene to try their technology, they're going to come to you because you have that natural history study. They might skip over groups that aren't as organized, so that's a huge thing. Our community of families are more than willing to participate in research. They're eager, as they know it's the only way that we're going to get closer to a cure. So with more data, treating clinicians can now define the disease and predict outcomes for their newly diagnosed patients. They can also take the necessary steps to stay ahead of complications, like I said before. So our community, the sum, became the many, as it grew to include not only the patients and their families, but educators, therapists, clinicians, and researchers, all invested in supporting our mission to find a cure. The foundation helps to bridge the gap between science and real life, how the research translates into treatments and a cure. Research brings us hope, and in turn, we inspire the researchers with the stories of our children who are waiting for a cure. We are so honored and proud of these relationships that we've built with these organizations and many, many more. I couldn't fit them all on there because it's going to take the power of the many to cure the one. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer now. I also know that I'm standing in between you and lunch, so we can talk at lunch too.
Are there any questions for Leah?
So I'm a school nurse, and I've just got to say that I had a little girl with this, and she had just totally uncontrolled seizures before she started a clinical trial of the drug, and it was amazing how it helped. So it goes to show if, you can start getting these clinical trials, they really can help. We were prepared in the school district for the worst, that she was really going to have a tough time, and she is doing amazing.
That's wonderful.
It was really a game changer for her.
Good, yeah.
So
that's so nice to hear. So you've seen what it can actually...
I've seen what it can do, and I've seen what clinical trials, can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So,
good. Yeah, we're very excited about future clinical trials coming very soon also, based on some of the research that has led to translational stuff. That's really, really exciting times.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Leah, we have one more question or comment.
I have two questions. I have two questions. One, did your son's symptoms start like all at the same time, or did they progress over time?
He started with developmental delays.
Okay.
And they started since birth.
So they just keep like popping up essentially?
The list that
Yeah.
I gave, that's all, it's progressed.
Okay. And I stuck to what you said about school, stuck to me how he has 24/7 assistance. My son is also nonverbal. He's 3, he's in diapers. Essentially, that's going to be his life. So you said he's in school for 8 hours a day? Like, is that a normal school? How does that work?
There's so many different options based on what's right for you and your child, but my son is in a self-contained classroom in a regular school. So he has his one-on-one nurse with him, a one-on-one aide, he has therapists coming in and out, and a teacher. But there's a whole bunch of options. You could have him in regular classes with the support. I'm happy to talk to you about my experience with schools and IEPs. It's also been rocky, but I've learned a lot, and I've learned how to advocate without emotions, which is huge, and you're going to be getting there.
Well, I say it stuck with me because his IEP meeting is literally on next Friday.
Oh yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
Sit with me at lunch.
No, right. I'll be there. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments in the room for Leah? Okay, so quick announcement. Thank you, Leah. We really are so grateful for you to share your story.